I am so glad you are here for season 5, episode 10. We are actually bringing back a repeat guest. Amber Benge was on a few episodes ago, and she's back to talk about another difficult topic. But as usual, Amber always brings encouragement and great tips and insight, even to the difficult topics. Today, we're talking about chronic health issues. And for Amber specifically, she battled Lyme's disease. Um, but she has a great story. It has some really low points, but it ends on a very positive high note. So stick with us. You're going to love it. But we're also just talking about the overall idea of what can we do? What simple steps can we take towards a healthier life, even when we're battling chronic illness? So I think you're really going to be encouraged. And let me just tell you who Amber is in case you missed. She was on episode 7 as well. Amber Benge is a gardener, a writer, a homeschool mom, a pastor's wife. She's on YouTube and Instagram. If you go look for Grace Walk Farm, you will find Amber. And let's just dive right in. Amber, I was so excited that you were able to come back on. I know that the last time you were on, I believe it was episode 7, you shared some really helpful, insightful thoughts with us and great tips in dealing with eating disorders and recognizing them and overcoming them. And I knew that there was another topic I would love to talk to you about. So I'm so glad you had time to do another recording with us because this season is all about simple steps to improving our health. And one issue that's really near and dear to my heart with health related issues is chronic illness, because I have a daughter who has been battling a chronic illness for years, and it's not something that's ever going to be cured. And I know that a big part, even if you can't cure the illness you're facing, you can change your attitude, you can change your outlook. You are in control of that, and it makes a huge difference. And Jordan, my daughter, has taught me this so clearly. And I knew that this was the case for you too, that you have such a positive outlook on life. And I know that you've battled some really serious health issues, and I knew our listeners would love to hear your insights. So thank you for coming on and talking about yet another difficult topic.
Well, thank you for inviting me back. I'm always
Oh,
happy to share.
well, good, because I know you are an encouragement to many. So today, it's almost half of a population in our nation that is battling a chronic illness.
Mm.
And that's just a bizarre thought to me that 50% of us here in the US are struggling with something that we might not ever be able to cure. And it's a battle we fight every day. But I would love to hear your particular story. And I know that that's going to encourage us. So, how long have you personally been struggling with chronic illness?
Really, for most of my life, it goes back to when I was around 5 years old, and I had a tick bite. And from that, I ended up developing Lyme disease.
Wow. So 5 years old. I actually had no idea that this battle started for you
Yeah,
way back then.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It was a little bitty thing. We had gone on a family vacation, and I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I can remember my grandmother and my aunt and my mom kind of crowded around me, putting cool cloths on my head, where I
Mm,
had a fever. And at that time, Lyme disease was really not well known. Back in the 80s, tick-borne diseases just weren't on the radar of even our doctors. And it was really thought it was mostly something that happened up in the New England area. I'm in North Carolina.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
it wasn't something they looked for. And
Yeah.
they called the doctor, and he said it's probably a spider bite. If she doesn't get better, bring her in, we'll give her an antibiotic. But I did get better. The fever went away, and I started feeling okay again. And so we just kind of moved on from it.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't find out until over 30 years later that that was sort of the ticking time bomb
Wow.
that started.
Wow. That's crazy. So, how did you have a lot of health issues that you didn't know what was going on?
Yeah, for sure. It was so difficult because it would change over time. And that's one of the hallmarks of Lyme. It's known as kind of an imitator because it can imitate so many other diseases in the way it presents. So it's
Mhm.
hard to get a diagnosis, really. And the
Sure.
testing for it's inaccurate anyway.
Totally. I know. I've seen friends battle that for
Yeah,
sure.
it's hard, but so the way it looked for me through childhood was I was sick a lot. If somebody had strep throat or a stomach bug or a cold, I always caught it.
Mm.
So I would every year end up missing a good bit of school for illnesses.
Well,
And
remembering the last time that you were on the show, that diet of Cheerios and oranges that you went on for a while, I'm sure did not help you fight off
yes,
any diseases or
my nutrition was definitely fueling the fire.
oh my goodness. And by the way, if anybody's listening to this that did not catch Amber's first recording with us back on episode 7, you got to go check that out to find out what we're talking about because it's not a good thing.
Yes, things not to do.
Yes.
Oh, but yeah.
So you were having all these different issues. How
Mhm.
did you ever come to a point of a diagnosis?
It wasn't until many years later, and I ended up developing arthritis in my hands kind of in my late 20s. And then from there, I started to have all sorts of autoimmune symptoms.
Mm.
I started to get shingles frequently, which
Ugh.
normally people get shingles once, if ever. And
Mm.
I've had it 6 times.
Oh man.
And I started to have, lots, all of my blood work would show markers for an autoimmune disease, but it was so inspecific. They couldn't quite figure out which autoimmune disease. And so I started the doctor shuffle, as I like to call it,
Mm.
where the family doctor would pass me to this specialist. And then if that didn't help, we would try this specialist. And so, I mean, I had my gallbladder out. I had a full hysterectomy at age 24.
Oh my
I
goodness.
had tonsils and adenoids removed, and really like any part that they deem non-essential, they tried to take it out to see if it would help me.
Oh
And
my
none of it
goodness.
did. I just continued to get worse instead of better.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then finally, I kind of hit a point with it where it was crippling me. The joint pain had become such an issue
Yeah.
that I was starting to be like where I couldn't function in life. One of my ankles was really affected by it, and it would swell to like 3 to 4 times its normal size
Oh man.
and be so intensely painful. And so I got to where I almost couldn't drive. If it was a very short distance, I could, but I mean, I would have somebody drive me if I had a doctor's appointment within 10
Wow.
minutes
And what did
away.
you think was causing that? You thought it was arthritis?
Yeah, that was really what I thought it had to have been. I was given a laundry list of diagnoses during a few
Wow.
years of time.
But
But
wait, do you think that all of those things you listed, like even the hysterectomy, all of that was attributed to Lyme's?
yeah, I definitely do. So Lyme disease
Really?
is tricky because it can attack all the different systems of the body in different ways. And the bacteria for it is actually shaped like a corkscrew. And so
Wow.
it can burrow itself deep down in the cell and
Wow.
actually kind of cloak itself and hide itself. So even if you go get tested for Lyme, it may
That's
not
why
show
they don't
positive.
work.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's the trickiest thing. And
Mm.
so finally, I kind of hit the end of my rope with it. I had been on antibiotics 11 or 12 times in that year. I was
Mm.
losing my ability to drive. Walking was becoming difficult. I had this beautiful
Wow.
garden I wanted to be out spending time in, but
Mm.
it hurt to walk out my front door. I mean,
Wow.
it became, it was to the point where I was so discouraged. I really felt like I'm never going to get better. Like this is what will eventually take me out.
Wow.
Um,
Now, I
and
know
so,
you mentioned when we talked last time that you had done a lot of, you were into herbalism and you had really been treating a lot of things naturally. Is this when that all started for you?
it is, yeah. So
Mm.
I went to a bioenergetics practitioner here locally, and
What's
that was
what is that?
bioenergetics.
What does that mean?
So it's really an interesting concept. And personally, I think this is the future of medicine. I think eventually this is what a lot of medicine will go to.
Wow.
The idea behind it is everything in nature has a frequency. So viruses have frequencies, bacteria have frequencies. And
Like
so,
that they pick up like on radar or something?
yeah, so
Wow.
they have developed a scan where they can go in and search for, let's say, they'll take 20 bacteria frequencies or 20 viruses, and they search you to see if you have that frequency anywhere in your body. The only way you can have that frequency is if you have had that virus or bacteria. And
Wow.
so when it shows something, that's the red flag, and it says, okay, this is something you've been exposed to. And it's
Hmm.
sort of like fishing out the root cause. Instead of looking at your symptoms, it really doesn't base it off that at all. It's all about what frequencies it finds.
Hmm.
So I was incredibly skeptical, very unsure, but at that point, I was willing to try anything.
Yeah.
And so I
Wow.
went for a scan, and right away he said, "Have you ever been bitten by a tick?"
Hmm.
And at first I thought, no. I mean, I've had ticks on me. We have tons of ticks here where I live. Matter of fact, the computer I'm looking at yesterday, I pulled a tick off the computer. It's
Oh
fine.
no.
Everywhere
Now,
here.
does that terrify you now after
It
what you've
does.
been through? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big anxiety trigger for me when I see ticks. It freaks me out.
Is it true though that the bigger ones that we see aren't really the ones that are carrying the Lyme disease?
It really depends. I don't think you can really tell completely by size. There are certain kinds of ticks that carry Lyme versus others that don't.
Hmm.
But in general, my advice is always, if you have a tick that has bitten you and it is embedded, you need to get it tested.
Yeah.
There are companies, it's usually around $40 or $50, but you can mail that tick in and they will test it and tell you if it's carrying anything that's transmissible.
Okay. Now, this might sound stupid, but do you have to send it right away? Like, is there a window of time? Do you know?
I'm not totally sure about that.
Okay.
What I would
Because I
say,
know I've always thought about it. We've had tick bites and I've considered it, but I've just never like done the research or, is that something I can like even put in the show notes? Is that something easy for me to find for people?
yeah, absolutely. There's several companies that do it.
Okay.
If you go to LymeDisease.org, that is
Okay.
such a helpful hub of information, and there's stuff on there about how to get tested,
Okay.
and that'll kind of put you on the
Perfect.
right path.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, but the bioenergetics was something completely different, but it revealed the Lyme disease. And at that point, I kind of had a choice. They said, the traditional treatment for Lyme disease is antibiotics, and you do high doses and long periods.
Meanwhile, Amber's done lots of antibiotics.
Yes. So I had already taken the exact antibiotic that would be
Wow.
prescribed, and I
You
knew it
knew
would.
that wasn't going to work.
Yeah. So I thought, well, let's try the natural approach and let's just
Especially
see.
since your gut health is completely obliterated now. Let's
Yes.
do something good for my gut.
Yes. Like I was so ready for, instead of more pills, I wanted something that was lifestyle. Like,
Yes.
because when you have chronic illness, it doesn't matter what it is, you feel very out of control all the time.
Yes.
It feels like this is happening to me. And so it sort of, in a weird way, gave me control back, because
Hmm.
no longer was I a victim of this. I felt like this is a journey that I'm on. And I got hope. Like I started reading stories of all of these people that got better. And I thought, wow, like now I know what
Hmm.
I'm facing, what's wrong with me. There was such relief in that.
I
Now I had
like
a
this.
name for it.
Yes.
And
I like that. And I mean, it fits in with the philosophy that we have in general, just the name of the podcast, simple doesn't mean easy. And
yeah,
this is going to be work, but look at the good side.
yeah,
You're in control of that work. You now have something to work towards, and it's not going to be easy, but it's better than where you were last month.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's a long-term thing. The thing with chronic illness is when you're sick with something for years and years and years, no matter what it is, there's a cumulative effect to your body. So even if you defeat, for lack of a better word, whatever it is that's causing the sickness, if you fish out the root cause and you treat that, you still have to deal with the fallout of the war your body has been through. And
Yes.
that's not quick. It's kind of like you hear people say about losing pregnancy weight. They say it took 9 months to gain it. It's going to take at least that long to lose it.
Definitely.
It's
Yeah.
sort of the same concept,
It was a
so
decade for me, but that's beside the point.
I'm still working on it. So, okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a process. And so you have to give yourself grace and take it one day at a time. And what can I choose today that is going to take me closer to my goal of good health versus what could I choose today that would make me feel worse tomorrow?
Yeah.
And learning those things. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we did herbs. I worked with a naturopath. I did an herbalism approach, took a lot of herbs and tinctures and supplements. And I also incorporated some homeopathy.
Hmm.
Um,
Can you explain the difference to us between herbalism and homeopathy?
yeah, absolutely. So herbalism is exactly what it sounds like. It's the use of herbs, plants. Plants are medicine, and the deeper I learn, the deeper I go into this, the more I am amazed that
Absolutely.
really there is a plant for everything. And
Yes.
most of them are the things we call weeds that we're yanking out of our garden
Yes.
all the time.
I know. It's so true. And the way that, I mean, of course, God designed it this way that
Yeah,
the things we need are where we need them, even. Like if you look at like jewelweed, it grows in swampy areas,
yeah,
right where the poison ivy grows. And if you have the poison ivy rubbing against you, you can grab the jewelweed leaf and rub it on, and your itch is better. And God designed it that way. And
it's amazing.
of course, the illnesses that we're going to face, a lot of them he designed could be aided by what he put in nature. That's just, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. It's like,
Yeah,
I'm going to pause this episode for just a quick second to remind you that you can get an amazing deal on truly the best soil test kit I have ever even heard of. If you grow any of your own food, you have to test the soil, find out the nutrients that it lacks, or maybe the nutrients that it has way too much of. That's the problem that I faced a year and a half ago. And not only does this soil test kit show you those things, it actually gives you the solutions and walks you through it in layman's terms. So go check out at redmondagriculture.com and use code solely rested on a few soil test kits that will get you totally on the right track with the food that you're growing. Again, it's redmondagriculture.com and the code is solely SOULY rested, or you can go to solelyrested.com/soil. Everything about my personal experience with my garden soil woes and a link to this great kit and a reminder of what the code is all going to be found there at solelyrested.com/soil. But don't wait another day because this will change your garden.
it's fascinating. That's one of the kind of tenets of herbalism is the land that you live on will produce what your body needs.
Mm,
And it's interesting because when I started, I was mostly taking, herbal blends given to me by my homeopath.
okay.
And I started learning about herbs that piqued my interest. And I took a deep dive. I signed up for some herbalism classes. And what I learned was that there is a plant for everything. And really, it doesn't matter what you're dealing with. You can almost take your phone outside with that plant ID app and
Mm-hmm.
start taking pictures of random plants around your house. And you've got the herbs you need to feel better. They're
Mm,
already there. We just have to unlock it up here in our brains to recognize them and know how to use them.
yes.
And so,
Yes.
and then homeopathy is sort of another side of it. So it's more of a Chinese medicine. And the way it works is it's based on the idea of like treats like.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, if for treating Lyme, what I did was I took a tincture, I took it every 3 days for 11 months.
Wow.
And it had the bacteria that causes Lyme diluted by like 1,000 times until
Mm-hmm.
all that's left is the frequency of that bacteria.
Huh.
And you take it, you introduce it to your body. And because remember, the Lyme bacteria is like the corkscrew and it hides. your body doesn't even recognize it as an invader once it's
Oh,
been there for so long.
interesting.
Yeah. So what the homeopathy does is it wakes it up and it says, hey, this is a foreign invader because it's coming in a different form. It's a new introduction of it.
Okay.
And it wakes your immune system up to do what it needs to do to start to fight
So
back.
it starts finding the corkscrews.
Yes. And
Wow.
it eliminates them one by one.
Wow. Well,
With
I
that,
like the way you described homeopathy. So it's basically a simple old-fashioned version of our current vaccine system.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It's sort of like you get a flu shot, you get a tiny bit of the flu in your shot, so you don't get the whole nasty 2-week flu.
Right.
That's the premise behind it. And homeopathy is sort of a natural version of that.
Okay. And I'm always going to go with the natural over the
Yes.
modern, if you ask me.
Yes. Well, I've tried both, and I can tell you
Yeah.
the modern
Yeah.
didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we talked in episode 7 about food, the modern
Yeah.
food doesn't work for us either, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Give
And
me old
food was a
fashioned
big
every
part.
day.
Yeah, food was a big part of healing for me too. And just learning to take care of myself well as I dealt with all of it,
Yeah.
making some changes. And it wasn't so much about eliminating things and saying you can't have this or you can't have that. It was more an approach of these are the foods that are going to best serve your body as you're
Mm,
healing. These are the foods that are going to bring down your inflammation. And so when I sort of adopted that view of it, the diet piece was not a big deal. It felt like instead of taking a handful of pills every day, I'm just eating foods that are going to support my
yeah.
body.
Did you kind of make yourself eat some things that you really don't like?
Yes, I'm still working on it. Ferments are hard for me.
Oh,
I grew up in a very processed food kind of family, like I talked about on our previous episode.
yeah.
And so ferments are one of the things that my naturopath really wanted me to focus on to heal my gut from all those
Okay.
years of antibiotics. But I
Enter
hated it.
kombucha stage left.
Yes, yes.
That's
So I
fermented.
like the kombucha actually. That's
Uh-huh.
probably the and sourdough. I
Yep.
like it, but gluten-free sourdough is a very hard thing to master.
Oh, I bet it
So
is. Have
I
you
still am
gotten
not great at
close?
that.
You gotten
No, not
close?
really.
Oh.
But I'm still trying. But
Yeah.
things like just something as simple as sauerkraut.
Yeah.
Like I was so scared of sauerkraut. It was something I had never had, and the taste of it was really awful to me at first.
See, I hate sauerkraut.
Do
Do
you?
you like it now? Did you
Not
make it?
really, but I
No,
make myself eat it.
I hate it. When people get all excited about all the fermented foods that I enjoy and I talk about all the time, they assume I like sauerkraut, and I'm like, are you kidding me? That stuff is foul.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't
It
know.
is. It is. But when you're fermenting it yourself, just a little plug for fermenting, like you can taste it daily and you
Hmm.
don't have to let it go crazy fermented, awful tasting. You can start refrigerating it, after it gets to the taste that you like, which is how kombucha works too. You can do the
Yeah,
same thing.
it's very
Uh,
personalized, and
It
that's good.
is.
That way,
Yeah,
when you first try it, you can start with very mild ferments.
definitely. So how are you now today?
I'm actually really good.
Yeah.
So I did 11 months of the protocol that my naturopath filled out for me. And when I started, his prediction was it would take 9 months to treat.
Okay.
But my body fought back really hard. The
Mm,
first couple of months, my symptoms got worse.
mm,
And it was really, they call it a Herxheimer effect. And it's really common when you treat Lyme, no matter how you treat it. But it's a pulling out of kind of the toxins from your system. And so the joint pain got worse, um,
mm.
energy level got worse. I was getting sick. I got
Wow.
shingles again. Like all these things
Oh.
started happening.
That
Um,
must have been so discouraging because you're doing the right things now. How
yeah,
did you talk yourself through those really hard days?
there were a lot of days I wanted to quit. And honestly, the family support I had from my husband and kids were a huge part of it. I wanted to feel better for them so that I could enjoy my life with them.
Yeah.
And so they were my cheerleaders. And then I had an amazing naturopath. And,
Mm,
he reminded me when I was ready to quit, I would call him and just cry. And Went in one day about 6 months into the process, and at that point, I was about mad. I was like, I've been doing this for 6 months. I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to feel better.
I even tasted sauerkraut.
What more do you want from me, man?
Yeah.
But he said, you have been sick with this for 35 years, basically. And he said, you're not going to be sick with something for 35 years and magically recover in 6 months. Your body just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And he reminded me, like, give grace to yourself. Like, this isn't a race. There's no competition for when we finish.
Yeah.
And so I would go back and have a new bioenergetic scan every 3 months just to kind of see, is it still there?
Okay.
And
But
when
wait, you said that it could read it if it had ever been there. So the scan can tell the difference that yes, you had it, but now there's less of it.
So the idea is you want to get to the point where it's not shown on the scan anymore, where it is,
Okay.
there's no frequency of it in your body left.
Okay. So
And
even though
so,
you had Lyme's, you could someday get to the point that there's no frequency of it. Okay.
yes. So they say it depends who you talk to, but the general theory is you don't ever get rid of Lyme disease, but you can
Right.
go into
That's what I thought.
remission from it.
Okay.
So remission from a bioenergetic standpoint would be when you don't see it on the scan anymore.
Okay. So at
So
that point, I don't know. I'm just guessing. Maybe that means it's just such a small, minuscule amount. It's just not showing up, maybe.
I guess now my
Okay.
practitioner, he says once it's gone, it will not come back.
Oh,
He,
wow.
he's been doing this for years, and he has never had somebody with Lyme where it reoccurred unless they got a new tick bite.
Wow. I
So,
didn't know that was possible.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of everybody has very strong opinions both ways on it, but
Okay.
I hope he's right because
Me
I feel
too.
so
Me
much
too. I
better.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
So through this all, okay, so then you got to the point that it really started, you started to see good positive results.
mhm.
And how would you say you are now on that spectrum? Like, are you getting close to feeling Lyme's free?
Yes. So I am officially in remission.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, as of last December, I had a scan and I had nothing there. And
Wow.
I actually went 2 weeks ago and had a checkup scan. And I had shingles again, which scared me to death.
Mhm.
And so I went in and I do not have Lyme. It was not coming from that. Um,
Wonderful.
but that shingles thing just can activate if your body is under some stress. And what
Mm.
had happened, strangely, is I planted 85 tomato plants in one day. I spent a whole day and I didn't wear sunscreen, which is so silly, but I
Oh,
just didn't think about it. It wasn't that hot outside, and I got a really terrible blistering sunburn.
oh.
And the area where I sunburned a week later, I got shingles. So it was the stress from the sunburn, we think.
Wow. Those tomato plants.
Yes. they,
It'll
they
be
better
worth
be
it in the end, right?
they better be some good tomatoes after that.
Now, speaking of tomatoes and speaking of fermenting, my favorite thing to ferment is cherry tomatoes. So that might be something you want to try this year. Really
Yes,
good.
I need to try that. I
I
love
love
tomatoes,
them.
so maybe I would like that.
Yeah, I know. You and I both are tomato freaks. I know.
Yes.
All right, guys, I want to pause this episode to tell you that I've already recorded next episode. And in the outtakes, when I was talking with our guest, we got to talking about kombucha. And I realized, you know what? Just because I can, I want to extend my sale on my kombucha course. It was supposed to end in the end of May, but like I said, talking with this guest and how on fire she was about how much she had loved my course and how she loves making kombucha, I just thought, you know what? I'm going to extend it. So for one more month through the end of June, you can grab my masterclass. Go to I was going to say go to Solely Rested, and it came out Coley Rested because I was thinking kombucha. Go to solelyrested.com/kombucha and seriously snag this at less than half off the regular price. Starting July 1st, I'm not going to change my mind again. I'm not going to extend it anymore. Starting July 1st, it's going to go back to the regular price. So if you are somebody that's out there buying kombucha, trust me, You absolutely need to learn how to make it yourself because it is so much more delicious. I have never purchased a bottle of kombucha that I liked as much as I can make kombucha. It is so much better when you're in control of the flavor, when you're in control of the fermentation. And all you need to know is really some simple tips and tricks. And I have it all lined out for you in the 12 modules of my masterclass. And this stuff is like life changing. First of all, it is the most fun I have in my kitchen. And that says a lot because there's a lot of things I get pretty excited about in the kitchen. But making flavors and bottling kombucha and then pouring out a glass of it every day, it makes me happy. You guys, if you're not making kombucha, seriously, check out this masterclass, soullyrested.com/kombucha. I will hold your hand, join me in my kitchen. We will make some bubbly fermented tea that you will quickly become addicted to. And that's okay because it is good for you. It is good for your gut health. It is loaded with beneficial bacteria, and it's what your gut needs for maximum health. I mean, that's what this whole season is about, simple steps towards improving your health. This simple step of drinking a glass of your homemade kombucha every day, it is going to improve your gut health and it's going to make you happier. It just is. That's the way it works. Kombucha, it's happy. So go to soullyrested.com/kombucha before the end of the month because then the sale is officially over, but grab it at less than half price. soullyrested.com/kombucha. KOMBUCHA. Go check it out. So I think you've already shared a lot, but I feel like I should just outright ask, kind of a summary of what advice you would give somebody who's in the middle of battling the chronic disease. Maybe they just found out, or maybe they're in that stage you were for 6 months that you're doing the right things and it's just not getting better. Maybe it's even getting worse. Like, what advice would you give them if you could sit down with them, hold their hand, look them in the eyes?
I think I would say number one, you've got to advocate for yourself.
Oh, such a good point that we haven't even brought up. So you're thinking of that time period that you had the 18 different specialists who were sending you all different ways.
Yeah.
How do you
And
do it?
even if you're treating it naturally, once you're in that process,
Hmm.
if you hit a wall and this is too hard and you just you can't
Hmm.
sustain it, like advocate for yourself. It's okay to say I've hit my limit. Like
That's a
need
good
a new
point.
plan.
That's a good point because when you say the word advocacy, I just immediately thought of the white coat in the hospital kind of doctors, but it's even true with your natural doctors that you
Yeah.
still need to be your own advocate. Do you have any tips for that?
I think number one, when you go in to see a healthcare provider, no matter what kind, I always advise that you would write it down ahead of time, the things
Mm.
that you want to say,
Yeah.
because I get in there and I look at that doctor and I will freeze up and forget 80% of what I needed to talk to him about.
Yes.
So go
Yes.
in prepared.
I'll always pull my list out. No, wait, let me see. Was there something?
Yes,
Yep. Yep.
yes. And do your research. Like
Yes.
just because your doctor says XYZ is the truth and the way of treating something, or
Yeah.
listen, they get it wrong. They do. And it's not because they're bad people. It's just because we're all people and our bodies are different. And what works to make one person better may not work the same way for someone else with a different body and a different autoimmune issue, or whatever's going on. There is no one size fits all medicine, whether you're dealing with traditional medicine
Yeah.
or alternative medicine. There really is not a one size fits all.
It's very true. And I still remember when I was in the ICU for 18 days with my daughter, just thinking often that, like reminding myself almost, it's not that they're bad intention, these doctors,
Yeah.
but they're going home.
Yeah.
The clock turns 6 and they're going home. And I remember sitting there in the ICU with my daughter crying in pain and me picturing that doctor that I was just talking to an hour ago. He's sitting at home around the dinner table and then he's probably going to watch some football and and
Yeah.
that's fine and that's okay. But my daughter's current pain is not as important to him as it is to me, and
Right.
I have to keep on fighting, keep on researching, keep on working until I find that clinical trial or the alternative medicine or whatever it is that this doctor might not even make the effort to think about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be afraid to try new things too. Like
Yeah.
I look back and if I was so skeptical going into that bioenergetic scan on the first day. I
Yeah.
almost talked myself out of going because I was just
Mm.
convinced this is a bunch of new age hoodoo. Like this is
Yes,
not
I would
gonna
have
help.
said the same thing.
Like I was really skeptical.
Mm,
But if I hadn't been willing to try something different, I wouldn't have gotten better. And really, the way things had been progressing, I would be
yeah.
talking to you from a wheelchair today. I was in bad
Wow.
shape. So,
Wow.
don't be afraid to try something different. If what you're doing is not working, try something else. Like, and when the days are bad and the pain is huge and you just don't think you can do it for one more day, stop thinking about tomorrow. Stop
Mm,
thinking about I have to do this tomorrow and focus on right now and utilize the tools that you have at your disposal. But the biggest thing that I could encourage is don't treat your symptoms. Really fish out the root cause. All the diagnoses I received, I mean, I'm
mhm.
just going to list a few: rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, lupus, Cushing's disease, chronic shingles. I mean, there was a whole laundry list. All of those were based on my symptoms,
Yeah.
but the Lyme disease was the root cause, and we never looked there. So it's a different way of looking at your body and understanding, my hands hurt, my joints hurt, but that's not the issue. It seems
Right.
like that's the issue because it hurts
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
But the issue is what caused that inflammation that's making my hands hurt. And when we can figure that out, then we can make the hands stop hurting.
Yes. And if you don't have a doctor that is willing to have that conversation, it's okay, but it's not okay for them to be your doctor anymore. Like you can keep looking. You need to find somebody who's going to help you find that base cause because you can keep treating the symptoms all day every day and
Yeah.
you might either not feel any better at all or you might progressively be getting worse and not even realizing because you're masking the symptoms then and it's just actually
Yeah.
making things worse.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
very true. That's a good point with the arthritis. There for about a year, they had me on some heavy duty medicine for rheumatoid arthritis, and
Mm,
it helped. My joints felt better, but it didn't help at all, really, because
yeah.
a year later, it all kind of came back and worse. Because the side effects of the medicine was just so
Yes.
horrific, I couldn't continue with it.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, this is all such good stuff. And as always, you've encouraged me, Amber.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so glad you're willing to share your story because it has such a happy ending. And there's so much in there that I think people can really gather bits and pieces for their own situation and really walk away feeling encouraged. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me and letting me share my story. And
Oh, please. We'll have to have you back even. So, where can people find you?
the easiest place to connect with me is I have a website, gracewalkfarm.org. So you can find me there. And then we
I know
also
you have a
have,
YouTube channel.
yep, we have YouTube and an Instagram page. And
Yep.
we're kind of all over the internet. If you look for
Great.
Grace Walk Farm, you'll find us.
Perfect. Grace Walk Farm. I'm going to say it in the northern accent, so in case anybody didn't catch it in the
There
southern
you
accent.
go.
Grace Walk Farm.
That's right.
Well, Amber, this has been great. Thanks so much for giving of your time and encouraging us today.
Well, thank you again for having me.
Isn't Amber great? She's just so sweet and encouraging. I hope you enjoyed the episode and I hope you join me back next Monday morning for our next episode here in season 5. Um, if you have thoughts you'd like to share with me, as always, reach out over on Instagram if you have encouraging thoughts of your own about chronic illness, and I would love to share it with my followers there. So, anyway, I'm going to end it here. I'll catch you in the next episode. Remember, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So, enjoy the simple, everyday efforts, guys. I know it's not easy, but we all know it's a good life.